We're coming up on some of the most exciting times of the year for the church, Easter and Mother's Day. We're going to see increased attendance and activity. So I want to ask you, will you take advantage of this or will you squander the opportunity? Will momentum take you into your next season or pass you by without you even knowing it exists? Why is momentum in church so important?
The Fresh Church Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Fresh Church Podcast. Today I want to discuss momentum. What can I do to identify and use momentum in the church? What is momentum? Why is momentum so important? All right, have you ever been in a bicycle accident before? I will never forget my first near tragic disaster. I was in third grade. I had just gotten my first bike. My dad had found it discarded on the side of the road, and after putting a brand new tire on it, it became mine. I remember the color was faded, it had a banana seat, and it wasn't like those new bikes with the brakes on the handlebars. You had to do it the old way with your foot, going backwards on the pedals. Now, my dad had told me that the ball bearings were shot, so be careful. I have no idea what ball bearings are, but I had a bike, and I was ready to go full speed. Now, I had just learned how to ride the bike using a friend's bike, so it took me a little bit to figure out my new bike, but before too long, I was cruising along. And now we lived on the side of the mountain in Montana, and the neighbors had a couple boys that I played with all the time. They lived just above us on the hillside, and there was this country road that wrapped around our property and went up a hill to their house. Now, over the years, I have driven over some high passes. I've driven over the Rockies a number of times. I've been on 4-lane roads. I've been on 2-lane roads in the middle of a snowstorm. I've been on a dirt road being chased by a forest fire, but that's a completely different story for another day. But the road that went by my house and up the hill, it has got to be the highest road I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it was steeper than I'll get out. It was so steep, you could not ride your bike up that hill. You had to get off and push it. And now, erosion's a real thing because it's honestly not as high as it used to be when I was a kid. I remember it a lot higher than it is right now, but it was still a really steep hill. And so one time, I was playing at their house and we decided to ride down to my house. So we jumped on the back of my bike. Yeah, that's right. There were 3 of us on my bike. I was standing and pedaling, and the 2 of them were sitting on the banana seat behind me, hanging on for dear life. I'm sure it was safe. I mean, I've been riding for a couple of months. I mean, I was practically an expert, right? I didn't have a chauffeur's license, but it's Montana. Who really checks your license anyway? And so we headed down the hill at a pretty good speed. And it was me and my 2 buds on the back. And I remember just kind of coasting and occasionally tapping the brakes to keep it in control. And beside us was their dog. And at one point, one of the boys mentioned, look, our dog, and the dog's name was Ralphie, Ralphie's going faster than us. Now, my 3rd grade boy couldn't allow that to happen. And I went from coasting to pedaling. I was going to beat that dog no matter what it took. Now, before I go any further with the story, I forgot to mention a couple things. At the bottom of this hill, the road took a sharp 90-degree corner and then out onto a flat fielded area. And I also need to mention, this wasn't a typical highway. This is what's called a county road. And for those of you that have never experienced a county road, what it means is, well, it's not maintained very well. It's about 1.5 lanes of asphalt. It's been there a long time, and it's got all kinds of little holes in it. On the edges is gravel. In other words, if you're in a car meeting another car, usually you have to split the difference, and each of you are driving in the gravel a little bit in order to make it. Not a big deal. Now, on this particular hill at the bottom, the gravel was a little bit higher on the edge, creating a little bit of a berm. So I'm headed down the hill. I'm going full speed. And as I get to the bottom, I start to make the corner, and I've gotten a little far out on the corner, and my tires hit the gravel. I start to slip a little bit. I may have panicked. I slammed on the brakes. The bike stopped, but we didn't. I remember flying face first into the gravel with 2 kids on my back as we went sliding across the ground. Now, quickly, I was being the older, more smart person in the group. I began to look around and assess the situation, set up triage if needed. The younger boy, he had a cut on his shoulder, and I remember him heading up the hill crying to go find his mommy because he was scared and everything else. The older boy, he had some gravel in the palm of his hand, and so he headed towards my house that was closer with kind of a hissing sound like, ooh, that's hurting so much. He just wanted to wash it off. All right. Suddenly I realized my bicycle was there. It was in a pile. The handlebars were all messed up. And so I moved it off the side of the road and tossed it in the tall grass. I noticed in the midst of that my right arm had a lot of scratches on it. It was bleeding a little bit, but I just needed to sit for a second and rest and just allow the adrenaline to come down. And as I did that, I sat there. I took my hat off because I noticed my chin was stinging. And so I had a ball cap that I put against my chin for a second. When I pulled it off, my ball cap was covered in blood. All of a sudden, I realized, I think I'm going to die. The panic set in a little bit. I got up and I started heading towards my house as well. As I'm walking, I'm watching the blood drip down my shirt and onto my shoes, and it was a little scary. Got home. I lived obviously through it. My arm wasn't broken. It was just kind of scratched up a little bit. But the worst part of the whole thing, that dumb dog beat us to the house after all. No matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't beat the dog. I learned a lesson through this. I learned about something called momentum. In this situation, the speed of my descent combined with a turn at the bottom caused an inexperienced cyclist to crash and burn. I underestimated the speed at which I was traveling, the issue as far as a sharp corner, what kind of condition the roads were in, what kind of condition my bicycle was in, and the immediate consequences of my reactionary decisions. You see, momentum can be a blast or a total train wreck. One of the things when it comes to ministry is I've often been applauded by my ability to use momentum to my advantage to grow the area of ministry that I've been over. So what is momentum? Well, in the business world, momentum can be defined as a strength or force that allows something to continue or to grow stronger or faster as time passes. Momentum in business is one of the most important things that you can get. Some companies have figured out how to get it started and how to ride the wave of it. Others just keep hoping maybe it will happen at some point. And I worked in sales for a little while. And while I was there, they always said the worst time to take a vacation is when you're in the zone, when you've got momentum, when sales are happening. You ride that thing as long as you can. In church world, we can see where some churches will all of a sudden start growing and start ministering in a new lane and start seeing momentum rise. In the same way, momentum can be crushed in a church by the announcement of staff leaving or a moral failure or one cranky person who complains the momentum away. I've seen churches suddenly burst at the seams and then not be able to contain it because they weren't ready for it. I've seen churches prepare for a surge and add 2 more people because no one showed up. Momentum can be your friend or your enemy. And that's why momentum is so important. In leadership, I would strongly encourage you to take time to study momentum. And we're going to talk about it some today and what people out there are doing and a whole lot more that we can be doing with it. That being said, most of the best stuff out there is written in the secular world. You have to take it and adapt it for church world and use it for yourself. So you want to know why there's so many challenges with momentum when it comes to church? We like to use the God card. What do I mean by that? God's doing a new thing. Well, God has us in a waiting period. Look at the revival God is pouring out. It's a wilderness season for our church. I guess it just wasn't God's will. Let me make one thing very clear. God's will is that none should perish, that the body of Christ grow in anticipation of his return. Even in persecution, we see the church grow. You see, we have a responsibility to preach the gospel, make disciples, and baptize not only in your immediate city, but across the planet. Stop blaming God and let's get to work. Let's grow the church. So it's important to identify momentum and then determine the best way to grow the kingdom during this time. Now, there's lots of ways to project momentum. I mean, you can sometimes get momentum from a new hire, like a new youth pastor, and there's an excitement in the air that comes from that. Sometimes you can get momentum from a new project or ministry venture, like a local outreach or a kids ministry remodel, or maybe bringing in a guest speaker. But having served in family ministry and church, there's a natural ebb and flow of things in the calendar year that can give you momentum. I mean, look at your calendar. Let's see, in the fall, kids go back to school. Why did I start in the fall? Because I'm in family ministry, and that's when kids' year start, is in the fall. After a couple weeks, everything starts to settle down. They're used to going to class again. By the end of September, people are back in church. They stay through the fall with a slight hiccup over Thanksgiving, and then everyone dresses up for the Christmas services. Crickets over the Christmas break. Nobody's coming. Then a new year starts. Some churches fast and pray through this. Some churches share brand new vision on what's exciting for their new year. There's an excitement for a new year that starts building a little momentum. By the middle of January, you're starting to see it. And then it just kind of plateaus throughout February and into March as winter has us kind of shut in. School's super busy. Honestly, everyone buckles down and attempt to pay off the credit card debt from Christmas, right? By mid-March, people are getting antsy. They want to do things, but not spend money. Spring break comes, and there's nowhere to go. Kids are bouncing off the walls. Easter happens, and the church has their biggest numbers of the year. Then we have a couple weeks of glory until Mother's Day. By mid-March, people are getting antsy. They want to go do things, but they don't want to spend money. Spring break comes and there's nowhere to go, and the kids are driving them crazy. All of a sudden it's Easter and church things are happening and everyone's excited to go, giving them the biggest numbers of the year. Then we have a couple weeks of glory until Mother's Day. By the end of May, all of the momentum is crashing, and comes Father's Day, there's nobody around. Summer happens and we pull out all of our topical sermons, with things like music playlists and favorite movies. Or if you're an exegetical sermon preacher, you preach out of Proverbs because that has a new subject every couple of verses. It's the topical book of the Bible. And then here comes the fall again. Praise God, we can get back to normal. Normal? We do the whole thing again. Well, right now in your calendar, we're getting ready for a major momentum boost. We've just come out of the holiday season. New Year came. You've shared all of your visions and people are finally eating again. Now what? February, you probably did some kind of a marriage thing or going to do some kind of a marriage thing because that's what we do in February. And then we completely forget about relationships and focus on Easter. Now, there are 3 different ways that your church is going to handle this time of year. You're either just going to keep doing what you've been doing, keep preaching what you preach. We've been doing it this way forever. Why change? There's no wave. There's no momentum. We made it through. You might do a breakfast on Easter morning or put a sign on the road, but church doesn't change much during this season. In the business world, that's actually how you go out of business. The second thing is you decide this is the biggest event of the year. You're going to blow it out of the park. You get all your volunteers in place. Maybe you plan a huge production or a play. You pretend to crucify a guy in your church who looks like white Jesus, right? You do an Easter egg hunt with 1 million eggs. You promote all over town and how great your church is, and you add a couple services in there. This is your Super Bowl Sunday in the church world. This is when everyone goes to church, or at least everyone who's attended sometime over the last year all shows up on the same week. You pick the best songs that deal with graves and angels and empty tombs and Jesus. Your kids all come out of their classes chanting, Jesus is alive, Jesus is alive. You preach your best sermon with your best sermon illustrations. You've got a giant egg maybe that breaks and you bring out illusionists to put it back together again, or you have the Easter bunny bowing down to the cross or some other kind of crazy thing. You've emptied your bank accounts. You've pulled out all of your tricks. You've worked your team to death. Easter happens, and you have your highest attendance of the year. You shout for joy, and then you crash hard. So does your momentum. Nothing new, no follow-up, no relationships. By Mother's Day, you added a couple of people, and you lost some burnt-out volunteers who never want to do that game again. But you have a statistic for the annual business meeting. Good job. The third option is you plan for the momentum. Let me help you with that. In Fresh, we talk about 5 core values. Family, relationship, experience, safety, and hope. Family is building connection between home and the local church. Relationship is developing authentic bonds through tribes. Experience is creating encounters that create a wow factor. Safety is protecting what God's entrusted in the environments that we have. And hope is preparing the way for kids, families, and leaders to fall in love with Jesus and discover the hope that He has for them. So when it comes to this time of year, I hear everyone talking about experience. Let's have the best experience of the year. Shock everyone and get them to come back to attend again. I hear a few people talking about safety, budgets, facilities, parking lot teams, enough volunteers for kids ministry. Of course, we all know Jesus is going to be preached, so hope is part of the season. We might do baptisms or a special way of getting people saved that Sunday. As long as we do something for the kids, we're kind of ministry to the family, aren't we? Are we? Yet in all of this, there is nothing about relationship. In fact, when we put too much emphasis on experience, you often burn relationships and leave people burnt out, hurt, and wondering why they're even a part of your ministry. New people come and they're impressed how awesome everything was. The week after Easter is kind of a letdown because all of your best people are taking the week off to recover, but they stick around for a while. On Mother's Day, they get a rose or a box of chocolate. They hear a mediocre sermon about how great women are. By the end of May, they realize they really don't know anyone in your church. They haven't gotten connected. Will anyone even notice if we're gone? So they skip Memorial Day, and then Father's Day, and then the summer. And then they realize mid-October they should probably go back to church. But why would they want to go back to your church? Because they really didn't connect with anyone there. And they're back to church shopping again for the next big event, Christmas. They'll give you a month or two, but by that third month, if they haven't made a legitimate connection, if they don't have an authentic relationship, they're going to start looking elsewhere. So what are you doing to connect with people during this season using the momentum of Easter? You've already started or you're getting ready to start conversations about what Easter is going to look like, the experience part. And yes, do that with excellence. There are tons of ideas out there that you can buy, borrow, or steal. And whether you're a big church, a little church, or a unique church doing it your own way, have fun with that. People are going to come, and there's going to be momentum that occurs. And then the pastor on his surfboard is going to ride that wave all the way to shore and be done about the middle of May. No more waves, no more momentum, summertime. So how do you take advantage of the momentum of this season and grow that momentum throughout the rest of the year? Are you ready? Relationships. People need to get connected to other people. So let's talk realistically what that looks like in your church. And realize if you're a kids pastor, a student pastor, an executive pastor, or even a lead pastor, it's going to look different. You need to create elements that will work in your ministry, in your community. So I'm going to walk you through 8 things the church can do during this time to grow relationships with the momentum of this time of year. And you can adjust these to fit your specific needs. Let's start with this. Number 1. Identify your audience. Is your audience unsaved, unchurched people? Is it backslidden or simply people who are no longer attending church? Is it church people from other churches who are looking for something different? Yeah, that happens, okay? Is it just getting all of your people to actually show up the same weekend? Who is your audience? You need to know who you're wanting to impact during this short opportunity. Honestly, you can probably only impact 1 or 2 of these groups. If your answer is everyone, then you're just throwing out a net and hoping to catch some fish. Specific fish require specific bait, specific types of nets, specific methods of catching. Know your audience. Number 2, you need to have a welcoming atmosphere. Create a warm and welcoming environment within the church. Greeters, welcome teams, hospitality efforts that can make newcomers feel welcome and encourage those social interactions. Work on your lobby team now. Have someone do a secret shopper on your campus. Bring in someone like myself who can do an assessment and let you know what needs to be fixed before Easter comes. Listen to my podcast on engaging new people. Be ready when they come. You want to make sure everything about your experience is welcoming. Number 3, as we look at ways to help you with momentum, is having networking events. Organize events specifically designed to facilitate connections, such as a family night or coffee hours or fellowship gatherings. These events provide opportunities for people to meet and get to know each other in a relaxed setting. That can be pastor meet and greets or seasonal life hangouts or just doing fun events. And turn them into regular fellowship activities. Schedule them so that you can have potlucks, picnics, or game nights. You have people in your church who would love to host those kind of things. And it's a way to turn relationships into building a church family. Start doing those events now. Number 4, family and parenting support, or honestly, other types of support groups that you can have. Provide support groups for family and for parents and for people going through issues in life. This allows individuals facing similar life stages and challenges to connect and share those experiences. Parents are realizing that they've got no idea what they're doing after a week of having their kids home with no school because of spring break. Give them options. Realize that over this period, your target audience is going to need next steps with the action steps of your sermons. Don't just do the, hey, we'll see you all next week. Provide them with a way to find support. Number 5, have a new visitor orientation. Host orientations or welcome sessions for new members, for new people visiting your church. This allows newcomers to learn about the church, its ministries, and provides an opportunity to connect with others who are also new to the community. Have an easy way to onboard people into your church. Maybe do a church tour because people don't know where things are. It's not a membership class. It's a welcome to the family class. Take time to get to know each other, ask people names, find out what they've done in the past. And remember, no one in this class knows anything about you or your church. So take time to explain, answer questions, and be available. More importantly, help people build relationships with other people in the class. All right, so as we continue talking about ways to build momentum, number 6, your next event needs to be ready and planned that's inclusive for all ages. You see, you got to plan events that cater to different age groups and demographics within your church. You have to remember that if you do an event specifically for 4-year-olds and you want to connect their parents, well, there's going to be young parents. There's going to be some older parents that are on their second marriage, second round of kids. There's going to be some grandparents that are the ones making sure their kids actually make it to church. Have something that works for everyone and connects them together accordingly. And if you're getting people to come to your church on Easter because of an event, an Easter egg hunt, a special service or ceremony or whatever that looks like, then you've got to have 1 or 2 future events planned as well. What brought them for that one is going to bring them back to the next one. Start thinking about what that next event looks like and promote it and build relationship around it. Number 7, small groups. For a lot of churches, this is their primary method of building relationships. Small groups allow individuals to connect on a personal level, to share experiences and support one another in their faith journey. These can be prayer groups, Bible studies, topical subjects, social activities, and get creative. And there's all kinds of resources out there on small groups if you're not doing it right now. But let me share this. You need to launch new groups right now. Why? Because as people start coming back to church over this next couple months, you can immediately plug them into spots, into groups that are already meeting. They can join a group. Then as soon as Easter is over, start another round of small groups. Give people the opportunity to get engaged, to find out what it means to be part of a small group. And even if they don't join, at least they're hearing about it, and they might sign up for the next round of small groups. And whatever you do not shut down small groups over the summer. You can tweak the way they meet, where they meet, how often they meet, but when you shut down small groups, you kill the momentum of relationships in your church. And where you've just built that up over Easter and Mother's Day, keep it going through the summer season. And finally, number 8, have a service project ready to go. Encourage participation in a community service or an outreach project that you have planned. This is a low commitment that helps people make friends while feeling like they're making a difference. And again, do things that work for the entire family. Now remember, there is a natural opportunity for you to have some momentum in the weeks and months ahead. You can ignore it. You can ride that wave until it crashes you into the shore, or you can plan to take advantage of this momentum through building relationships and see lives impacted beyond this season and into the fall where the next wave of momentum is getting ready to take off. Momentum can help you grow your church over the next couple months, and if handled properly, set you up for a more successful year than you could have ever imagined. Get excited about momentum and learn how to use it.